Hey everybody, you're listening to Word Talk with Click, Scribble, and Scrawl, the Stetit cousins, where even in the script notes that you'll never see, we use the serial comma. How are you guys today?
That's right. Not bad. Not bad. It's not it's not cool out, but it is gray, so I've decided it's still boot season.
Excellent. I have some news for the show.
Oh, very good.
We've hired a new publicity firm.
And who is our publicity firm now?
I'm afraid to ask.
It's Gandalf Incorporated. Their motto is, keep it secret, keep it safe.
Right. But, yeah, never mind. No. Okay, yeah.
So, anybody have any questions?
This is what happens when we let you make the business decisions.
Don't worry, Emma. He doesn't have the power to write checks.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
Or the technological ability, really.
Oh, I have a question for everybody. This is something that comes up a lot with my students, and they put me on the spot. They asked me this question. I have no idea what the answer is supposed to be, so I'm going to stick you guys with it, okay? I'm always telling them, don't tell your reader too much. Give your reader a sense of what's there, but don't spend all of your time on the lengthy descriptions. Don't give them a lot of explanations because the reader doesn't want those. The reader wants to know, well, A, what happens next, and B, the reader wants to take part in figuring it out. But then my students very wisely asked me, how do we know when we've given them enough to figure it out? Okay, here you go.
This one's in my wheelhouse, and there isn't there's an easy answer, but it isn't easy to do.
I thought we were going to do there's an easy answer and then there's the real answer.
Well, I suppose that's true. The answer is reader head. You have to be.
Is that like Motorhead, only
readers? Yeah, exactly. It's a matter of getting into the head of the reader and trying to, and this is so useful in every aspect of writing. If I were reading this book, what would I be thinking at this moment? And,
okay.
And basically, the reader is exactly as smart as you are. This is a severe problem if you're Mike Ford.
Yeah.
Or
the late John M. Ford was, unless Gene Wolfe was in the room, the late John M. Ford was the smartest guy in the room.
But he
didn't always realize it, so he figured we all got the joke.
Exactly, yeah. Which is, I have to admit, there's a certain pleasure in being the smartest person in the room, which is why I've been enjoying isolation and quarantine so much.
Well, good.
Did you have an answer for them, Emma?
I didn't really, which is why I stuck you guys with it. Now, the problem with Steve's answer, the idea of getting into reader head, is you never really can because you know what you're doing. So there's always those parts that you thought were in the manuscript, but they aren't actually there when you go looking for them.
Yeah, most of while you're writing is the time to be thinking about reader head. Reader head sounds to me like something for editor head, not for writer head. You know, writer head is trying to figure out, all right, what are the interesting bits now that would not occur to the reader? Should I tell my Terry Windling story about the first draft of my first book?
Oh, I think that story is always appropriate. Yes.
Okay, I'm not sure it's directly relevant, but it might be.
It's very closely connected because
in the first draft of my first book, I left out all of the things that I said, the reader will plug this in. You know, I didn't bother to describe, a sword, a tunic, or whatever, because I sort of said to myself, the reader's engaged, they'll give, what they need. And Terry pointed out that if you do that, the reader will plug in the most generic version. Your job is to give them the version that won't occur to them. Now, I think some writers get carried away with that. They fall so much in love with sort of trying to create their unique vision that they forget what the vision is supposed to be serving. So I think you basically need to give appetizers.
That's the telling detail thing.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
But okay, let me respond to both of you because you're both right, except that it isn't that simple. The thing about getting into reader head as an editor, yeah, and not as a writer is true, but also not true. As you're flowing, as you're getting into the story, as you're telling the story, the more you're able to know where the reader is with you. And the point is, this is not a simple thing. My entire career, if you will, has been attempting to refine and get better at exactly that. You're constantly doing it. And then in the rewrites, of course, you try again. But it's the thing to work on. It solves it addresses, it's not just that it solves problems, it provides opportunities. It's where you can comment on where it's at. It's where you can flip the cliche on its head. Oh, the reader I'm writing for sophisticated readers who know that, okay, Joss Whedon did it classically in Buffy. Was the sort of the set off for the whole thing was exactly that. Two teenagers in a spooky, lonely school, and one of them saying, "Are you sure it's safe here?" Every sophisticated viewer knows the girl's in danger. So it turns out the guy's in danger. It's that kind of flip that you can do by knowing what your reader is thinking. And the way you do that is by controlling it, by bringing up some cliches or some tropes and being aware of them. And like I said, it's difficult and it's a constant, and you constantly learn.
Let's move into some questions soon here.
Okay,
Some
that's right. All these
callers.
these nice people showed up on our screens to ask us questions, and we're yammering on as if we had, I don't know.
It is a
As if
question
we were
I've been answering. So I did have a couple of folks message me, and we're going to talk to them in order, assuming that they're here. Who we're looking for first is Wes Pollock. So Wes, if you're here, go ahead and unmute and tell us your story question.
Wes!
Do we have Wes here?
We don't have Wes.
No Wes. No more, no Wes.
So Wes is more. Okay. That was really,
I beat you.
you beat me to it both. B, that was low-hanging fruit for both of us, Al. I mean, that was,
okay.
you know.
Hey.
Name puns are just, you know. I went for it too, but no.
All right, well, let's see if Twitter user Barsumcore is here.
All right.
Good name.
I am. My name is Corey. Hi.
Hi.
Corey.
Corey.
So this is really exciting. I'm big fans of you all, and it's a real treat to get to be a part of this chat. I've been working on a King Arthur story for a long time and have finished various versions of it, none of which I have been very satisfied with. And I just thought I would throw it into the middle of the room here and see what happens if you all kick at it. The take on the story is that there must be some explanation for Mordred's ability to convince everyone left behind in England to fight to the death to prevent Arthur from returning. And I don't find any examples given in any of the medieval accounts to be very compelling, where he bribes people or he just kind of talks them into it or whatever. And so my story is really, the thing that's always captured my imagination about the story is trying to explain that question. And I'm very sympathetic to this Mordred character. Feels like maybe he was on the right side of things and it all kind of went sideways for him. The struggle I'm always having with the story, there's a number of struggles. One of the things I struggle with is deciding how much of the fantastical to bring into it and how to do that. I'm going with a like post-Roman version of Arthur based in southwestern England. I don't know how deeply any of you have researched that sort of stuff, but that's the take I'm taking on it, where they're resisting Saxons coming from the east. Yeah, so I want Morgan Le Fay to be a character. I really love her as Mordred's mother. I'd just be curious to hear your takes. We can get more specific maybe if that goes anywhere, but what comes up for you with that?
Well, my gut says that the more historically accurate you get, and in this case, it sounds like you're attempting to get relatively historically accurate, the more specific your fantasy should be. Not that you shouldn't have any fantastical elements, but that your fantastical elements should be, you should be able to explain why history didn't notice them, since you're trying to make everything else historically accurate. Now, I may be overthinking this.
No, I'm inclined to agree. I think you're exactly right.
Okay.
The history is the glorious part of that, and the secret history part, to use the Tim Powers term, is the hidden explanation of why, and that's what makes it cool. I really like your story idea. Well, go ahead. I think Emma has something to say.
I'm just thinking about, okay, who benefits from Arthur not coming back? Mordred obviously has something, a reason why he wants Arthur dead, because, well, it was kind of his idea, if you're going with the same thing. What's up with the Saxons? And does Mordred have a reason to think that it would be better to let the Saxons into England rather than keep them out?
Thank you. That points to, so the story I have, just if I'll just come back and give you a little bit more detail there with where I'm at, is that Britain is vulnerable to the Saxons because Arthur is away in Brittany trying to defeat Lancelot.
Sure.
My story, most versions of my story have begun with Guinevere's return to Camelot, and with the news that Arthur is continuing the war even though Guinevere's been returned. And it's that makes Mordred think this is not going to go well with the Saxons getting antsy on our eastern border. And I need to take some action. And I think I've always kind of let that slide. So that's really powerful. I appreciate that thought.
Are you thinking of this as a short story, novella, novel, or trilogy, or have you decided there's...
It has taken a number, as I mentioned, it's taken a number of forms. I've been working on this story since, the early 80s, mid 80s.
Yeah.
So it's taken a number of forms. I've written it as a play. I've written it as a graphic novel. I have written some short stories. So I have a lot of mythology built up around it. Yeah. But it feels like a long story to me. It's something lengthy in scope.
Well, see, that's why none of us are going to steal the idea from you, because you've already done all this work and we're looking at this and going, too much work.
Yeah.
That's a relief.
Yeah. Based on what you've said so far, it makes me think of Shakespeare and Macbeth and Lady Macbeth and the Witches.
It's so funny that you say that, because originally the first version was in fact a 5-act play written in verse.
Oh,
very Shakespearean. It was absolutely the initial concept. Turns out Shakespeare's really good at writing, and yeah.
Oh man, who knew?
Well, the last thing that I've got to suggest is that you focus on the relationship between your protagonist and his mom, because it sounds like she's the source of the magic in this story, or the main.
That's very true. Yeah, no, that's right.
So thinking in terms of what both of them want could lead you in some interesting places.
Thank you.
And I have one more.
Please.
before
Yeah,
we move on.
For a
You were
second there,
talking
I thought we'd drunk you under the table.
the you sound like you're focused on the question of the mechanism, which is, yeah, how does he do this? Which is cool because mechanisms always fascinate me too. I have no idea where you are politically, and we don't want to get into that. But wherever you are,
I'm Canadian, that helps.
take a look at current events, at what's going on and what's going on with the press and with manipulation of public opinion, and play with that. Don't get heavy-handed about it. You know, you don't want to turn it into a big message thing, but that can probably provide you with some bits and pieces and inspiration.
That does. Thank you. Thank you very much, all of you. I appreciate that.
Good luck.
You're very
You're very
welcome.
welcome. Thank you, Corey.
And thanks for coming to the show.
Oh,
Yeah.
my pleasure. Thank you.
Next caller.
Awesome. So who is next on my list is J. Laurence Sarno,
Ah, I see on the list.
who is on the list. So
Yes,
if you
I
want to
am.
go
I
ahead
am
and
here, Jen.
awesome.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I've been working on a series of short stories because of my work. I can't write all the time. So I figured, like when Lawrence Block started the Keller series, he started. I read as much crime fiction as I do fantasy. And
Good. They feed each other.
yeah,
They
tell me
do.
about it. So what I did was I started with the series of short stories and I started showing them to my friends, and they said, "Yep, the writing's good, but the issue is it's a real time and place. So it's Manhattan in the late 1970s. Okay, the protagonist is a young woman. She's a martial artist, has been for a very long time, and sort of dropped out of her life so that she could basically rescue people who are in situations of domestic abuse. Now, everything is absolutely taken from life. Obviously, the characters are all amalgams. The stories are all anonymized, all of that. And I've gotten feedback that that nobody wants to read stories about martial artists anymore. It's fantastical and it's overdone. Even though it's actually real in this case, and nobody wants to hear, and that the cliche that the rescuing people from domestic abuse or domestic violence has become a cliche. And so I'd kind of like some feedback on that. And yes, it is 2:23 in the morning in England.
Oh, well, thank you very much for showing up. At that
Thank you for
hour.
your suffering. We respect it.
Oh,
Yeah.
alcohol has been involved.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. Excellent.
Even more mad props. Mad props.
Thank
Also, if you're
you.
a certain kind of writer, hey, it's still early.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but
I mean,
like,
this is
for
when I do
me,
my best work. Yeah.
Yay. Okay.
same here.
Um,
But that's just because I need to be awake when my characters are.
Okay. Well, let's start by assuming that this is what you want to do.
Okay.
So let's sidestep, for now at least, the question of whether it's marketable, there's an audience,
Right.
Because I'm first committed to the idea that you should write what you want to write, because there's no guarantee of success. So writing what you don't want to write and failing is horrible.
Right.
I would just correct that to write what you want to read.
Okay,
Yeah,
Steven.
this is based on you write what you can't read.
Because
Right.
nobody else is writing
You're
it.
looking for a
Because no
story.
one else is writing it.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So taking it from that position, I think we have to think in terms of, well, for me, I would focus on the characters.
Mhm.
Because I don't think anybody really wanted to read shipboard stories when Patrick O'Brien started to write, but we discovered that we wanted to read stories about Aubrey and Maturin. I don't think people said, "Oh, we want to read stories about
The British Navy in
Right,
in
exactly.
the early 19th century. Yeah.
That
yeah,
is very on point. Yes.
yeah." Now, I think style is also a factor, but I don't think we really have room to get into how the heck do you come up with a cool voice. I think you'll find that on your own or you won't. I think it's better that right now that we focus on characters, because I think that's what first engages most readers, especially if you're planning to make a series of this.
Yep.
So that you need to give as much attention to your supporting characters as your primary characters. There's an interesting balance here.
Okay.
Too often I see people, I see two very common mistakes. The first is to come up with this really cool central character, and everybody around that character is boring.
Right.
Because this is like the most amazing character, and it's like, as the writer, you want everybody to go, "Oh, how amazing." The second mistake that I see is the flip of that, which is the writer goes, "Okay, I've got my amazing central character. Everybody will know that this character is amazing. Now let me really focus on my supporting characters," and they'll end up creating more interesting supporting characters than a central character. I wish I could think of an example.
Because in their heads,
romances.
Because in their heads, that main character is fabulous.
Yeah.
But some of that fabulousness is still locked in their heads. They haven't got it on the page.
Yeah.
I will kind of double down on that idea of focusing on the characters. Particularly, I think one of the things that, I haven't read your manuscript, so I don't know for sure, but one of the things that your friends may be reacting to when they say, "Oh, this has been done, this is boring, this is stereotypical," whatever it is that they say.
Yeah.
I mean, my God, stupid people. What have they been drinking? Jeez.
Right. No, actually, Emma, the everybody, a lot of the negative feedback has come from people who actually haven't read the manuscript yet.
Oh, okay, that's even better. Because you really can't judge what's going on simply by identifying the genre of the story.
Right.
That's pretty much, every time somebody has come up to me at a conference or at a book signing or whatever and said, "I'm working on this great story. It's about this guy who climbs this mountain and he like has to fight this thing," and it's like,
Because you don't know who the guy is. You don't know why you care about him.
Yes, and a halfway decent plot, once you start summarizing it,
Yep.
Holy crap, it sounds stupid.
Yes.
I don't care what the book is. It can be the best book in the world. If you summarize the plot, it sounds absolutely stupid. So the first thing you have to do is to go back to your own work. You're the person who knows what's actually going on there,
Right.
obviously, and say, this is not just a martial artist who gets people out of trouble. This is
Right.
this martial artist.
Right.
This
Okay.
one who is obsessed with chamber music and
Right.
is determined to make the best risotto that has ever been tasted in the whole wide world. And, whatever it is that makes this person,
Okay.
and why they feel they have to go and rescue people when the world is full of, organizations and agencies that are supposed to rescue people. And yet this person feels they have to go out and rescue people. Why is that?
Right.
And
Okay.
so you're going to make a person that people will say, oh, I don't know, have there been like martial artists rescuing people out there? And oh yeah, but that was like some kind of weird, not very good superhero stuff. This is this one.
Okay.
And then
All right.
I think, okay.
That,
What,
no,
you wanna
Emma,
talk?
that's brilliant. That is absolutely
continue, Em.
brilliant.
No. I'm going to let my cousin Steve have the floor because he said a thing.
All right. I have a completely different take that feeds perfectly into what they both said.
No?
Cool.
My take is I hear woman, martial artist, fighting domestic abuse, and it immediately sets my teeth on edge in the same way that, oh, you probably don't remember, but back in the day it was, oh, you're a woman journalist, you should be writing about women's issues.
Right. I got that. And by the way, you and I are the exact same age, Steve.
Okay. Now, but here's the thing. Tying it back into what they said, and my computer monitor is just shut down, so I have no light. Just a minute. Okay, I got light again. Play with that, dive into that, and explore that. Not overtly, but keep that issue in mind, because as they said, this is a person. This is a person who's going to be aware of exactly that.
Yes. So, Steve, I'm not clear about which part that set your teeth on edge. I missed that.
It's saying, okay, this is a women's issue.
Right.
Women should deal with women's issues, and
Right.
let men, which implies let men deal with people issues, which really bugs me.
Will and I edited a comics anthology a while back that was like a little black and white thing. And there was a Minneapolis cartoonist who was really good, and I wonder what she's doing now. Her name was Lisa Blackshear, and she was always doing really funny, really imaginative, very political comics. But
Right.
they were political in a sense of talking about workers' issues in South America by having a woman shopping in the grocery store. And there was one of, those stands of bananas where they kind of hang the bananas around the pole.
Yeah.
And she walked up to it, and there was a guy in kind of campesino sort of clothes with the pole going through his chest into the floor. And the woman was kind of sneaking around the pole and snagging the bananas off the pole and putting them in her shopping cart and sneaking off to the checkout. And it was really brilliant. And one of the guys that we were working with said, I really think that she should focus on women's issues, because, she does really great stuff with women's issues, and it's she shouldn't be spending all of her time on these. And I'm thinking, what, you mean like world issues that affect humans?
Yeah. Okay.
But the point is, I'm not saying don't do that. I'm saying you have an opportunity to explore that.
Yes.
Okay.
And that could add a whole layer of interest to what I think could be a really cool story.
Yeah, because
right.
if you just assume that the reason why she's doing this sort of thing is because she's a woman, because it's domestic abuse, which women are usually the victims of, but not always.
Right.
Right.
That turns her again into an every hero,
Right.
every heroine.
Okay.
That she would have specific reasons for saying, no, this is my fight.
Right.
Yeah,
Yes.
and this tie, right, and another landmine to avoid is another cliche that really annoys me, which is clearest in superheroes. Why is Superman a superhero? Well, because he can be,
Right.
and so on. If you've got a superhero who's a woman, she's been raped.
Right. No.
Obviously no woman would go do this unless she had some particular, and that one really sets my teeth on edge.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that, Stephen. And in this case, she's not. In other words, she's
Right,
not doing
exactly.
this because she was a victim.
I assumed that. So, point being, I know you've got a handle on this. This is more stuff to explore that can make it more interesting and add depth.
I agree with you. That's brilliant.
Are you making this poor man suffer through this recitation so that the rest of our listeners will get this lesson?
Well, yeah.
No, I'm really enjoying it. I mean, it actually you know, you write about what you need to get out, right? You write about what what you desperately need to express. Yeah. And in this case, I'm a trans man. So I was that girl in the late 1970s in Manhattan. And now I'm an old fart in a flat cap. I mean,
with an accent that makes me think you're a Brit. How did you manage that one?
oh no, I was born and raised in New York. Okay.
Okay.
But
right.
because I'm in high tech, I've lived on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in Texas for my sins, Japan, and then and after Japan, finally settled in Cambridge, England, and I have this horrible hybrid accent. Yeah.
Well, see what's really fun when you move around like that is you can basically pick yours.
Right.
You know, it's like, oh, I think I don't know. In the long term, I think I'd like to be a Texan. Yeah, I'm going to be a Texan. Okay, good. Yeah.
But no, I really, really appreciate what you've said, Steven, because I think I might have fallen into that trap. Okay. And what Will and Emma said were absolutely brilliant. But I think I think, Steven, you're right. I might have fallen into that trap. And so I'm going to go back to my original thought, which is that she did not get into this because she herself was raped or you know, my original thought was just stick to my own personal experience about why she became this sort of avenging angel kind of character.
I think that's cool. And I think the main thing is it ties into what Will and Emma said about the things that make the character unique.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do you think it matters? I'm up to the 4th story in the book of short stories that has an arc, right? And my protagonist doesn't have a name yet. I can't name her.
Well, then don't worry about it. You know, some of my favorite stories have characters who don't have names. And sometimes it just takes a while to find the right name.
Right.
Clint Eastwood built a career on it.
Well,
yeah, you know, on the one hand, writers are desperate for reasons not to write. Not having a name for your character is one of the worst that I've heard.
Yeah. No. I actually made up a reason for it. I decided that she has no name because in her underground railway life, right, that nobody knows her real name.
Yeah.
That she's trying to be completely. That's bullshit. I just can't think of a name for her. It hasn't revealed itself to me yet.
I don't know. I think that sounds like a good reason to me.
Yeah, it's gonna be in the backstory someplace. You know, right. I like it.
And you can believe Will about writers finding reasons not to write. He once ran for governor to avoid writing a book.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Tell me it ain't so.
Yeah. Oh man.
By the way, I'm gonna get off here now because I know Jen's got other people's questions. But
Thank you very much. This has been that was a really good one and it was fun.
Yes.
Well, I really, really enjoyed it, and I want to leave you with something. When you were talking about less or more, I went to the town Tombstone, right, in Arizona.
Yeah, we love it.
Right? Okay. And have you read the tombstone in the cemetery that says, "Here lies less more, 4 shots from a 44, no less, no more." Brilliant. Thank you, mates. This has been absolutely fabulous. I'll get off the line now.
Yay.
Thank you for coming around.
I've loved
it. Go right.
I'm sticking around.
All right. That was awesome. Thank you. Okay.
All right. I know Joe had one, but do we have anyone else on tap?
Joe's the last one on my list, unless we circle around back to Wes Pollock, who may or may not admit to being here now. I don't think anyone new has joined.
Wes.
But, you know.
Well, how much time do we have?
Oh, we have about 10, 15 minutes, which reminds me, the discussion that we had earlier, our little dispute-oid over reader head and all that.
You call that a dispute?
I'll give you a dispute, guy. Hey.
Potentially.
Wimpy ass writers.
Gave me a new narrativity panel idea, so yay.
Hey, narrativity. Okay. Narrativity. We don't know yet if COVID-19 is going to get in the way of it, but narrativity is a convention that we do at the end of the summer. It's going to be at the end of August if in fact COVID-19 is not ramping up for its second wave. And
It
it's
might
here in
be postponed,
Minneapolis.
but yeah.
It might be postponed, but if we're having it here in Minneapolis, end of the summer. And any of you who are within reach or can be within reach are certainly welcome to come. We do this kind of thing all the time, except with more people, more voices, more cool opinions, and
More interaction among
yeah.
among the whole, whoever's
And then
there.
at night, we sit around and we sing songs and drink. It's fabulous. Please do come if in fact it is possible to do so. So.
All right, let's move on to Joe.
Joe.
I'm
Joe?
sorry.
There you are.
Awesome.
Still struggle clicking the unmute button, I guess.
Hey.
I have a question. I've been going through my first draft is done of a novel work in progress.
Yay!
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Well done.
And I am noticing that I'm falling into an old habit of a passive protagonist. And I feel like it's partially because this book has to do with government mechanisms and how governments tend to, when they have to come down on someone, they stick it to them. And it's that sort of sense of, you're going to get stuck and there's nothing you can do about it. And even in other settings, I tend to do these when things go wrong for a character, which I've heard is a good way to move the plot forward. I tend to do a thing where the thing that goes wrong makes the character reactionary as opposed to active. And I'm wondering if you have tips about how to frame disasters for your characters so that
I
they
have
don't
one.
become
I have
passive,
one
they
tip
stay
right off
active.
the bat. Right up.
So
quit
do I,
using
but you may have it.
reactionary. Quit using the word reactionary when you mean reactive. That's my first.
Fair enough.
Reactionary
Oh,
has a
good.
very
Okay.
specific meaning.
Well, that helped.
I'm a helpy guy.
Oy vey.
Yeah. Wow.
Step up and give him a nice tip. Otherwise, I'm going to.
Yeah, you go. You go.
Okay. If you've got a piece of the plot that the character really cannot have any control over, that hey, with an earthquake, a forest fire, whatever it is, something that the character really can't do anything about, make the character active in another part of the story, in another part of their life. Give them something that they can reach out and affect. Will likes to talk about there being three kinds of stories: the plot, the relationship stories, which is not necessarily a romance, it's just how the characters interact, and a kind of transformation or character change story. And that allows you to be able to say, okay, on the plot level, I've got this thing that nobody can control. There's a tsunami coming. But on the relationship level, this person can try to deal with their ongoing fight with their father, which is happening against this background of disaster. Pick out another place in the story where the character can be active if they can't be in the main narrative. See what that does for you.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, there's
And here's-
also this may be this is tricky advice because it's advice that I would argue against if someone gave it to me, but I still feel like it should be given. Which is that you don't have to have an active character if your character has an active inner life. You know, that if your point of view character gives us interesting commentary on circumstances in which the character is not able to be much more than an observer, we can value that character as an observer. Now, we may want some other character to then become the character who is being more reactive.
Okay, the examples that come to mind are Robert Penn Warren, All the King's Men, and F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, where we've got characters that we're seeing the action through who are not the active characters. They're
And
not
this-
the people that everything hangs on. Beg pardon?
interesting because this is sort of a protagonist versus society story, and that element, I actually am kind of worried about losing that element in that, it's sci-fi, so a lot of times you want it to be very closely relatable with society now, and we've got a character who should be able to react to something that is unfair and have that feel relatable now to struggles that we face day to day. Any common person might. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Makes a lot of sense, Joe, and I've got a speech to give.
Good.
As I think you know, since you include PJF in your handle like a good guy.
As you know, Joe.
Of course.
As you know, Joe, I am on a campaign to eliminate the distinction between literature and what we'd call lowbrow fiction. Or rather, not eliminate the difference, but I don't believe you have to be one or the other. And yet, what you brought up is one of the biggest problems, maybe the biggest problem in that. The entire realm of adventure fiction, which is what we're writing, focuses on the question of, we live in a society where an individual, most of us, 99.9% of us, can do nothing to change our society in a meaningful way. We can't have an effect, and yet we want the wish fulfillment of the individual doing a thing that makes a change. It doesn't even have to be earth-shattering and huge. That's what we want. That's what we're reading adventure fiction for. So you're facing right there a huge dilemma and a conflict. I don't like Philip K. Dick for exactly the reason that you bring up. His characters react, with the exception of the man who japed, I don't know how to say that word. None of his characters set out and do anything. They just sit there and get pushed around, which is what we spend our lives doing. So why the hell do I want to read about it?
In other words, Dick is too much like realistic fiction.
Exactly. And so all I can tell you in terms of advice is, yes, you have hit a real problem there, and dive into it and see what you get. Be aware of that
here, because
problem.
we didn't clarify one thing, which is, do you want this to be an adventure story, or are you trying to go more for that slice of life in a fantastical setting? Because I think they're both valid.
And that's always something I play with. I really strive for. This is the Green Zone, the Emerald City. My thing is 2005 Baghdad in space is sort of a rough setting for this book.
Yeah. Nice.
And so however, so it is fantastic in the sense that we don't have that space city, but I want the emotion to play very, very well to someone like me who grew up in a conflict they felt that was completely unjust, but lived with it as a reality.
All right. I think that's very cool.
Will, does that affect what you were going to say about this?
So it's adventure, I guess, to answer what you're saying. It's adventure-ish, but there should be that grounding, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I think it's beginning to sound like you're looking for that opportunity for the whistleblower, the person who generally can't do a big change, but might at a key moment be able to offer something that will have a bigger effect.
Oh, that's really cool, Will. I love that.
It is kind of that. I think
that's a potentially very, very cool story thing right there. Is essentially it doesn't have to be literally a whistleblower, obviously, but yeah, somebody like that.
To get into it, it really is sort of that thing, because it's somebody who thinks there is honor in signing up for the life of a private military contractor, thinking there might be some kind of real tangible good to achieve in that, realizes there totally isn't, and has to sort of operate within that world trying to do something good to salvage the mistakes they made, kind of.
Well, I think you're asking the right questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
And also, as a side note, I don't know if you've heard this lecture before. It's brief, but you have finished
Damn
your
well
first
better be
draft.
free.
No, he said it's
Brief.
brief, which it needs to be because I do have
brief.
two.
Okay.
I do have two other questions.
Okay.
oh,
before
okay.
I
you
just
guys
want to
have-
say, Joe, you finished the first draft of your first novel. In my opinion, for most of us, that is the most difficult thing a writer will ever do. So congratulations. From here on, everything's easier.
Awesome. Thank you.
Let's move on to another question then.
Great,
Thanks,
thank you.
Joe.
All right. I do have two more. We've got P. Baughman next.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
No.
So I had a whole list of questions, but I'm just gonna try and get just one in here since we're running short on time.
Wait 2 weeks and ask another one.
Yeah, bring us another
Sure.
question next time.
So my first finished novel, as yet unpublished, is about 105,000 words. And the main plot disaster, if you will, doesn't show up until about a third of the way in. Now, previous to that, there's a lot of relationship conflicts and some characterizations and things like that. But I'm wondering if that's too far in to really have a good book.
Yes.
Okay.
My instinct says yes. It depends on what you've got leading into it. If you've got, if the point of your first third is to lead up to that with a kind of weight of, oh God, here comes the inevitable, but no one is looking in the right direction, or no one has enough pieces to determine that in fact everything is about to go crash, and a third of the way through everything goes crash, and you've given the reader all the goodies that the reader is able to go, oh shit, these people aren't asking the right questions. Then you're building up suspense until you get to a third of the way through the book.
Okay.
But if you're mostly just kind of laying the groundwork for who the people are who will deal with the crisis, yeah, I think you want to start closer to the crisis. Aristotle was right. When in Aristotle's Poetics, Aristotle, I love being able to quote Aristotle. Come on, I never got to do it in college.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, that's when.
In Aristotle's Poetics, Aristotle says the beginning is the thing before which nothing happens. And that sounds dead stupid, it really does. But the thing about that is you look at the information you have and you say, what is the absolute minimal information that you know you need to start things going? Where exactly does the point of the book start? Not the, I was born in 1877 to a good farming family and I was, it's like, yeah, no, don't do that. Where we really want to go is starting with, what are the things we absolutely must have before we start into the action that's crucial to the rest of the book?
One of my... Go ahead, Paul.
Do you have a couple of people that you can give the book to for reactions? Because if you do, I would suggest finding that point that's currently a third of the way in and just setting those pages aside and essentially give them the last 2/3 of the book and ask them what they think.
Okay.
Yeah.
There are
Also, I just want to mention one of my absolute favorite writers in the world, Megan Lindholm, opened her very first novel halfway up a cliff, about to fall off. It's like, you can't do better than that. It's like, yeah.
Are things
so
happening yet? Oh yeah, honey. Yeah.
So she put the cliffhanger at the beginning of the book?
Yes. It was
Nice.
gorgeous. It's called, God, what's the name of her first novel? Do you remember, Em?
Oh, it's the one with the couple and the
Yeah, with
wedding.
Key and Vandian.
Yeah.
Look up Megan Lindholm, Key and Vandian, and
Yeah.
there's like 2 or 3 of them.
She's now writing as Robin Hobb.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what
Oh,
I
okay.
wanted to say in order to sort of reassure you about this is, if I remember correctly, the original first draft of Dracula that they ended up cutting.
Yep. That's
They
correct.
sort of said, I mean, and you shouldn't think of those cut chapters as wasted. Those were how you found the story. The first,
Yeah.
nothing in a first draft is wasted. What's wasted is what you keep in a second draft that shouldn't be there.
Let's
Okay.
try to get one more caller in before we
All right.
before we have
Thank
to
you
close.
all. Thanks.
Good luck.
Thanks.
Thank
you
you.
so much. Next up, we've got the wonderful Chris Wallace.
Hi, Chris Wallace.
Hello,
Hey,
Chris.
Fox. Waiting
Hello?
for Fox to unmute.
He fears us.
Yes.
I can force on
There he goes. Okay.
Got it?
No?
Okay.
Yes. There he is.
I think
Hooray!
we both had me
Hey.
muted for extra safety.
Yep. Yep.
Well, Chris, all right. Okay. Do you blame us?
No, I would have done the same. I wouldn't have
Yeah.
unmuted, honestly.
All right. Go.
So I have a number of works in progress, a couple of which Steve is familiar with, and it's very easy for me to write first drafts, and it's very easy for me to be inspired to write new things. I wrote a lot of articles for magazines, and I would rip through a 1,500 word article in an hour and a half, spend 20 minutes editing it, and my editor would print it as written. I got very good at doing that. It doesn't work with a novel. There's the whole rewriting thing, and I hate it. It's awful. And I find that even powering through it, when I'm not inspired to write it and in love with the things I've figured out that need to be changed, the writing just isn't very good. That it's not a lack of work ethic, although I've been fairly accused of that, but it's a lack of quality when I'm just making myself do it. And I have trouble finding, I have this 50,000 word draft written, which I think is quite good. And I love the characters and the voice. And I've figured out what needs to happen to make this a full length novel that has all the things I need in it. And I have a wireframe written for all these things. And man, when I start writing them, they're just miserable. They're just boring because I'm bored writing them.
Because it's not the nice, fresh, new stuff that you're putting down going, this is great. I have a sense of discovery here.
That's exactly it. Yes.
Yeah. There are still moments of discovery in the revision process. In fact, some of my absolute favorite pieces of discovery have been in the revision process. But it's true, you have to kind of gird your loins and say, all right, I'm going to go in here. I personally love revision. Why do I love revision? Because this is my opportunity to make it look as if I was that smart from the beginning.
That is what you're trying to do, yes.
Yeah, you're trying to make it look as if you always were that smart and you really meant to do that. But yeah, there are parts of that are going to leave you feeling as if this is a very mechanical exercise. I don't think there's any way around that. And there's also the phases of novel writing. There's okay, oh my God, am I a good enough writer to tackle this subject? Process of first drafting. Holy shit, I'm a genius. Chapter 6. This is totally hosed. I hate this. I'm never going to be able to get out of chapter 6 alive. This is so boring. Then there's, the push on to the end where you get to the end. It's this huge, fabulous endorphin rush. And it's just, oh my God, it's wonderful. And and then you go back and you reread it and you say, oh, this sucks. And everybody gets that. It's just something that you have to grit your teeth and say, yes, I know. I'm a terrible, terrible writer. It doesn't matter now. Just keep doing what you need to do. Because at some point it will all come back to you and you'll say, oh, did I write that sentence? Man, I'm not bad, am I? Wow. So that's not necessarily really practical advice for dealing with it. I just wanted to let you know that, yes, it's all part of the process. So when you're feeling that, oh, why did I do this? Oh, this is terrible. Oh, this is so boring. I don't want to have to do the mechanical part. Yeah, I hear you.
And I would add to that. Emma's absolutely right. And I would add.
I always am, really.
Generally speaking, yeah, except when we disagree. I would, if you take the most beautiful poem you have ever seen, whatever one of your favorites is, or set of song lyrics where the words are just perfect, chances are very, very high the poet or songwriter sweated blood in the revisions of that and changed an "and" to a "the," or just again went back and forth and just was, oh, this sucks. As Em said, that's part of the process. I hope that helps, because it's all I got.
I'm trying to figure out now how it is that you make those later drafts more interesting to you. And I think part of it is by asking yourself different questions than you do in the first draft. For the first draft, the main question you're asking is, all right, how the heck do I get to the end in a sort of a satisfying way? With the revisions, you're sort of saying, all right, now how do I enrich this? It's almost as if the first draft was the cake that you baked by throwing a bunch of stuff together, and the second draft is a second cake that you're now thinking about the things that you've put in and sort of saying, all right, what can I tweak in order to still come up with a thing that is the chocolate cake that I wanted at the beginning, but is now a chocolate cake with a little cayenne.
You please stop talking about chocolate cake.
Oh, sorry.
Really?
Or if you want to think in terms of hunting, not like creatures, but like exploring. That first draft is just sort of figuring out, all right, what's my route through the woods? Your second draft is, now how do I make this path more efficient? So I sort of feel like when I'm going in there for the satisfying second passes, I'm focusing much more on the precision. If you're a car guy, maybe you think of it in terms of, now I'm tuning the car. There should be a trick you can play to make that editorial pass kind of rewarding in its own terms.
I think we're going to have to cut it off because we are out of time at this.
We are past 9 o'clock.
Which is too bad, and we might have to pick this up again in 2 weeks because stuff. I would also point out that, dear God, we got into food, which caused all of our listeners out in our studio audience to suddenly veer off onto the idea of what you put in a chocolate cake to make it really, really good. Thank you, studio audience.
Really
I love
beautiful.
you. You're just like me. Thank you.
Meanwhile, all of you have just spent an hour here that you could have been writing.
Yes.
Word Talk has been directed by Jen Falia.
Recording engineer, Jennifer Slaw.
Produced by Jen the Mermaid Princess in association with Squirrel Co. Text Vendors Incorporated.
Theme music was A Meaningful Dialogue, written by Neil Gaiman and performed by the Flash Girls.
Electrical design by Trippin' Breakers.
Camera control by Lori Zolution.
Sound engineering by Whitey Say.
Website maintenance by Bugsy Feature.
The official Word Talk grammarian is ripping my hair out.
Wardrobe by Coach Duterre.
Voice coaching by Lucy Lipsenkoff.
Transportation by Orly Slick.
And don't read like my cousin.
Don't read like my cousin.
Don't read like my cousin.
This has been a Pilkenitzia production.